Good evening, Cougar fans. Big day for BYU football as the Cougars receive commitments from Washington wide receiver transfer Puka Nacua and Utah grad transfer Samson Nacua. Live reaction right now with me, Mitch Harper, your BYU insider for KSLSports.com on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, wherever you're watching. Share your comments, your reaction to this news of a pair of former local in-state kids from Orem High School in Puka and Timpview for Samson, now headed to play for the BYU Cougars. Going to give you my thoughts on what this does for BYU football in 2021 beyond, the wide receiver room going forward, and just how this all came to be for this Cougar football team. Again, you can follow us on Twitter, KSL Sports, Facebook, Instagram. Smack that follow button, and also download the KSL Sports app, brought to you by University Federal Credit Union. Andrew Stallings writes in, holy smokes, this is huge. It is huge for BYU, Andrew. Ruben Munoz says, sad, I thought they wanted to go to the NFL. Well, they got some eligibility still left. Samson Nacua is a guy that he's got 1 year remaining on his eligibility, and Puka Nacua a lot of years ahead of him for BYU football. Again, if you just missed it, you can see it on the KSLSports.com website. Puka Nacua, Samson Nacua announced via their personal Instagram pages they're committed to play for the BYU football program going forward. And these are big additions for this BYU football team. You think about the Nacua family, and they're kind of synonymous to me with BYU football. Kai Nacua committed to BYU a long time ago, back in 2012, and he became one of the all-time greats in BYU football history. The brother, Isaiah Nacua, was a heralded recruit out of Bishop Gorman High School. He committed and signed with BYU. Never played it down, but was a heck of a football player. Some things kind of went sideways for him. The father, late of Lionel Nacua, father to the Nacuas, he had a wish before he passed away that his sons would play at BYU. And Samson Nacua mentioned on his Instagram page today in his announcement that he spoke with his dad and he needed to be home for his mom. This is a big addition, both of these guys for BYU. Because this is a position group for the Cougars that at wide receiver, they lose Dax Milne. And there's going to be some questions as to, can these guys play this year? First off, Samson Nacua, he can play immediately this year. He's a grad transfer, only got 1 year remaining of eligibility left in his collegiate career. Puka Nacua, there's going to be kind of a to-be-determined deal. He's got 4 years remaining of eligibility, 3 years to play, 4 years left to fulfill those 3 years. The NCAA is going to vote on a one-time waiver, reportedly, according to Brian Fisher, a freelance writer with Athlon Sports. He reported today that the NCAA is going to vote on a one-time waiver for all student athletes after the Final Four. So that would tie into Puka Nacua, because as it's currently stated with NCAA legislation, Puka Nacua wouldn't be eligible to play this year. But feels like everything's kind of trending in the way that one-time waivers are going to be happening, because someone like Puka Nacua, too, will have a waiver eligibility reason to be closer to his mom and be closer to his family. So that's something to keep in mind, too, if the one-time waiver from the NCAA does not get approved. These are two talented players. For Samson Nacua, he was someone that ended up sixth in receiving yards for Utah. His best season was probably in 2018 with the Utes when they got to their first Pac-12 title game. Played in all 14 games, had about 5 touchdowns, a good receiver, a solid player, could play a little bit of tight end, things like that, but a solid player. The big addition, though, I think is Puka Nacua. I remember watching Puka. The first time I laid eyes on him live and in person was in 2018. It was at Margin Hooks, Sky's the Limit, former BYU wide receiver Margin Hooks. He had a clinic up in Draper. It was that indoor soccer place. I think it's off 114th South. It was in the winter time, so it was indoors. I saw Puka Nacua. He was there with BYU quarterback Zach Wilson, who was enrolled at BYU at the time. And Puka Nacua was going up against guys like Dion Lake, who's now in the NFL. Chris Wilcox, who's going to probably be an NFL player. And Puka Nacua was, as a high school junior, when I saw him for the first time in person, he was probably the best player on the football field. I mean, he was just a man at that age. Now, at Washington, you look at his stats, you look at some of the production thus far, and you go, he didn't start any games in the shortened season in 2020. That was in large part due to injuries. He also had a bout with COVID-19 the week of the Stanford game last year for Washington. But last year going into fall camp for the Huskies, Puka Nacua was considered one of the top receivers in that program. And then he had a foot injury, which kind of plagued him the entire 2020 season. But you look at his stats, though, about 15 grabs for the Huskies, or he's averaging about 19 yards per catch for Washington. He's a big time talent and was once a USC commit coming out of high school. Then he flipped and switched over to Washington and kind of a TV announcement that was on our airwaves here on KSL. But now Puka and Samson Nacua headed to BYU. And if you're just joining me, you can follow me. I'm Mitch Harper, BYU reporter for KSLSports.com. Puka Nacua, Samson Nacua headed to BYU, and Puka played at Orem High School during his high school career. Samson was at Timpview High School, and both had kind of a little bit of different paths to the college football game. Puka was the hotshot, heralded recruit, four-star guy, might be, in my opinion, one of the best receivers, maybe the best receiver in the history of the state of Utah. And I don't say that lightly because I have a deep respect and history of the sport from what we've seen over the years. It's not just a recency bias. No, but like, you don't see many pass catchers like Puka Nacua come through this state. He's one of the best to ever do it. Samson Nacua, coming out of Timpview, he was a preferred walk-on with Utah. He had a little bit of academic issues, was going to maybe go to Weber State, maybe Snow College. Ends up going to Utah as a PWO, gets the academics cleared up, and then he had a 4 or 5 year career with the Utes and is able to take advantage of the waiver year with COVID-19. Last year would have been Samson's last season of eligibility had it not been for the pandemic. BYU capitalizes, and they get both now Puka and Samson to come to BYU. What's your reaction? Keep sharing your thoughts. I can see some of the comments rolling in. Colbin Jackson, hope I'm saying that right. He writes, freak. Yeah, Puka's a freak for sure. Colbin Jackson again, answer what you think the 5-star Texas quarterback that went to Utah will be like. Jackson, I believe, like Quindarius Jackson. Not sure, honestly. That'd be probably better suited for Crimson Corner, our Utah reporter, Trevor Allen. LH Coug writes, go Cougs, hashtag beat Utah. Okay. Bridget writes, do you think Samson Nacua will be the starting receiver in 2021? It's a good question. I think that, you look at BYU's receiver room, and Gunnar Romney, I think, is going to be that number one guy right now. Obviously, got to sort things out with Puka in terms of the eligibility, make sure he's able to be cleared to play. You hope that the NCAA just clears the one-time waiver, because with the NCAA, they're going to have just a tsunami of waiver requests from these players that are transferring. When you look at the transfer portal right now, every single day, it's getting loaded up with so many guys going into that thing. So the NCAA, you're going to have so many individuals say, I'm leaving this school because of the pandemic. You're going to turn these guys down? I think it's going to be a one-time waiver is going to be allowed, and then Puka is going to be in the room. And if he's in that room and eligible to play this fall, Puka Nacua is going to be a starter. And you pair him up with Gunnar Romney, and I think someone like maybe a Cody Epps and Neil Powell comes back into this room. Chase Roberts now, he's someone, a Under Armour All-American at American Fork High School, kind of in maybe that next tier down from Puka Nacua. He potentially now has the luxury to just redshirt, just kind of learn and kind of observe from these guys. It's a nice luxury to have. And keep in mind, too, this is a BYU program coming off an 11-1 season, the best year that the program's experienced, I would say, in 15 years. And they now have a big quarterback battle, a big quarterback question. Who's it going to be? Whoever the quarterback will be, whether it's Hall, Romney, Conover, Myalva Peters, they're going to have some great targets to throw to. And the thing is, as well, they'll also have some good tight ends. This BYU team is built to have a lot of success. Kalani Sitake and his coaching staff have done a really nice job in building up the depth and the personnel. You look at the recruiting rankings for BYU and you think they're not really recruiting well. They're in the 70s. That's kind of, an afterthought compared to a lot of Power 5 teams. But player development, creating a culture that's family driven, it's become very attractive. And Puka Nacua was someone that BYU recruited heavily coming out of high school, but I think he kind of wanted to be, somewhere in the Pac-12, somewhere on the West Coast. But you saw what BYU did in the passing game last year with Zach Wilson, and now with Aaron Roderick as the clear-cut offensive coordinator for the staff. It's pretty exciting. This program wants to throw the football down the field, and it's got to be attractive for a guy like Puka Nacua, who now is going to be in a system that wants to throw. I know they wanted to be close to home for their mother, but it also helps them leaving a Washington program for Puka. That's kind of like wanting to run the football more. Jimmy Lake has not minced words about it. He wants to run the football, play a physical brand of football. BYU, I think, kind of coincides a little bit better with Puka Nacua's skill set to stretch the field. They want to air it out. Guys like Conover, guys like Baylor Romney, Jaron Hall, they can do that. If you're just joining me, this is the KSL Sports front page live reaction to Puka Nacua and Samson Nacua committing to the BYU football program. Getting some of your reactions. If you're on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, wherever you're watching, appreciate all of you. I'm Mitch Harper, BYU insider for KSLSports.com. David Groh writes, wouldn't it be cool if Samson Nacua caught the game-winning touchdown against Utah this year? That would be pretty cool. Trevor Allen, Samson is a great human being. Best of luck to him in Provo. Trevor is our Utah reporter, so shout out to Trevor. Jimmer Fan 7. Keep in mind, Conover played with Puka a couple years back in Polynesian game. Something to watch. It's a good point. I mentioned that in my article on KSLSports.com moments after the announcement was made. And you can see the clip here. Puka makes a heck of a toe touch grab. You don't see Conover's throw, but
hey, Zags fans, the Wells Fargo College Fandom Frenzy Sweepstakes is back for college basketball.
You can see now Puka Nacua's got a ton of talent, and he's going to be someone that I think maybe does have that relationship with Jacob Conover, and he's got to form that probably with Jaron Hall and form with Baylor Romney, but it's a good situation to be in for BYU. And, it was interesting. Kalani Sitake was asked, BYU just wrapped up day 5 of spring football a little bit ago, and Kalani was asked if they're going to be adding anyone in the portal, and he's like, recruiting is always happening. And honestly, I think that's just kind of the new wave of college football. This is now the new norm where every single day you got to be on the recruiting trail. You got to be in that transfer portal, logging in, seeing who's there, and evaluating everyone, because this is where I think you can fill the gaps if you're BYU. You can close the gap between you and some Power 5 programs with the transfer portal, because on a financial resources, you don't compare to Power 5 programs. But you can get that Power 5 talent that's got the talent, but maybe wants to leave due to some, personal home life, whatever it may be. They want to be closer to home. They can close the gap, because Kalani Sitake has done a really nice job when it comes to recruiting. I think back to Logan Fano, who just recently signed with BYU in the class of 2021. Fano decommitted from BYU. He was a longtime commit, decommits. And when he told Kalani Sitake that he was decommitting, Kalani told him, I'm supporting you. I care for you. I'm always going to cheer you on and support you. And I think that foundation, that knowledge, knowing that they've got a coach that just respects them no matter where they play, I think that means something. And I think it benefited BYU a lot with Puka Nacua because, Kalani and BYU faced Puka in 2019. He came to Provo, and Washington smoked BYU. But leading into that game, at the media availability, Kalani's weekly press conference, he mentioned how Puka was one of the best receivers that he's seen in high school football, just an incredible talent. And he just had a deep respect for him, for the Nacua family. And there's a sense of trust. And I think that kind of won the day here for BYU to get Puka Nacua and Samson Nacua. Because I think Puka is someone, if he played this thing out and wanted to go on a full-fledged, recruitment out of the portal, you're talking about some of the best programs in college football would have been pursuing Puka Nacua. Now, what does this mean for BYU football in 2021 as far as on the field? I would still say 8 to 9 wins for BYU because you still got to there's so many new pieces. They got to all kind of bring it together in terms of chemistry, but the talent is definitely there. And it's a good situation for BYU to be in, to have the talent that they do in that wide receiver room. Again, you can see all of the info on Puka and Samson up on KSLSports.com. Go check that out on our website, and also the KSL Sports app, brought to you by University Federal Credit Union. Peter Ja 4 says, I think this makes the BYU offense a reload, not a rebuild, ready for 2021. It could be. I said this past weekend on Cougar Sports Saturday with Matt Biamonte. I feel that BYU is in a situation right now where I don't feel like they can go really wrong with that quarterback decision. I feel like if they go with Jacob Conover, Jaron Hall, Baylor Romney, they're in a position to win 8 or 9 games. I do. I feel like the coaching staff is in a pretty good spot. All 3 of those quarterbacks are good. Conover, we haven't seen in a live college game, but I think all of these guys have the ability to be top-notch talents. I mean, Jacob Conover had an offer from Bama. All of these guys would be wanted by Power 5 programs if they were in the transfer portal. BYU's they got some good personnel. And I kind of looked at before I came into this live feed on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. I have my own like spreadsheets. I kind of forecast things out all the way to about 2025. I know it's weird. It's nerdy. I'm blessed to do the job that I do, because if I didn't have this job, I would just be like, why do I have these spreadsheets? What my wife would be like, what are you doing, Mitch? Like, you need to get a life. You need to shape up. But the wide receiver room. So this is what they got personnel wise. So you add Puka, you add Samson Nacua. Samson Nacua is going to be the 4th senior listed in the program. You also have now Neil Powell, who comes back. Gunnar Romney, returning starter, he played really well last year. I think people kind of forget about him because Dax was so dominant. But Gunnar Romney was really good. I mean, he was kind of the king of, he's getting stopped at the 2-yard line or the 1-yard line. If he gets 3 or 4 of those in, I mean, he has big touchdown production last season. Chris Jackson, we've seen some good highlights from spring ball of Chris Jackson. I think he's going to be someone that takes a step forward in his development. I think he's got to, because I remember that last year, junior college transfer, his story is fantastic. But he comes in and that Coastal Carolina game, sadly, I feel like it's kind of one of the big memories from his first season at BYU, where he went 10, 15 yards behind the line of scrimmage. You're like, you can't do that, man. You can't do that. So I think he's making improvements. He's now wearing Dax Milne's number 5 for BYU. Braden Keim returns, and he was the guy that had a scholarship offer coming out of Bingham High School instead of Dax Milne, so keep an eye on that. Keanu Hill, good bloodlines there with Keanu Hill, the nephew to Roy Williams, former Texas Longhorn, great and Dallas Cowboy player. Also, his dad played in the National Football League, and Hill is someone I know Kalani Sitake and the program really like. They've mentioned him as someone that's got a lot of promise, battled some injuries the past couple of years, but Keanu Hill's a name to keep an eye on. Cody Epps, who I talked about, I interviewed him over the weekend. Epps is battling a little bit of a foot injury right now for BYU in spring ball, so you're not hearing his name much, but once he gets healthy, I'm telling you, Cody Epps will be a big-time talent for BYU out of Mater Dei High School. He's got some connections to BYU. Think about this. With Cody Epps, the guys that were in front of him at Mater Dei High School, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Brew McCoy. I mean, that's why he didn't play until his senior year in high school. And then his senior year in high school, he puts up record numbers and becomes a first-team All-American from USA Today. His quarterback was Bryce Young at Alabama. So he was surrounded by high level of talent, high expectations in high school. I think it's going to carry over into BYU. He's just got to get healthy, though. Hobbs Nyberg's another guy. Been making some plays, but he's a walk-on. You're not expecting a walk-on to make a huge impact, but he's a name that's kind of factored into the program. He's a return guy, so there's some trust there from the program. Cade Moore, preferred walk-on, really like him. I mean, intriguing guy, potential for upside. I talked about Chase Roberts, Quinton Rice, son to Rodney Rice. He joins the program this fall. McGuire Anderson, another son of a BYU legacy prospect, preferred walk-on. So, I mean, that's your wide receiver room, and I think that's a really good group. Joe Nielsen as well, a former Washington offer for track and field. He's a walk-on for BYU, but I could go on and on. That's your group, and Talmadge Gunther as well. So keep sharing your thoughts. What do you think of this BYU wide receiver group? I mean, Dallin Holker, from Mission. He's the tight end. Andrew Stallings chimes in. Yeah, tight end room for BYU. You got Isaac Rex, Carter Wheat, Bentley Hanshaw, Ben Tuipulotu, Hank Tuipulotu, Dallin Holker, Lane Lunt. And then Ethan Erickson comes back from a mission as well from Kahuku. So BYU is pretty stacked. Oh, and then Mason Wake, another wing tight end, fullback, someone that made some big plays last season for BYU. I like the offense for BYU. Just so many new faces. You just wonder how long will it take. But one thing I do think, though, is that the schedule, I think people look at and go, 7 Power 5s, how are they going to compete? What Power 5 do you say that BYU can't hang with in that schedule? I mean, The Pac-12 has been the 5th best power conference in college football. Why can't BYU hang with those teams? I think the best team probably on Utah or BYU's schedule is USC and then Utah. Those are the top 2 teams in my opinion. And I think BYU's recently beat USC. Utah, that's going to be a hurdle in of its own right because of the emotional elements and how another layer to this thing with Samson Nacua going from Utah to BYU. Going to be some fascinating storylines in the rivalry coming up. Aussie Clasher Gaming. Health of the O-line is key. We don't have depth there like last year. That's interesting. I think the offensive line will be a spot that I feel it's going to work out for BYU. I think it's going to be a position group that they're going to get a good starting 5. So this is kind of my projected starting 5. I was actually writing this earlier today. So left tackle from left to right, this is how I kind of project the O-line, as my opinion. Blake Freeland, former quarterback in high school. I think he's going to start at that left tackle spot and replace consensus All-American Brady Christensen. Left guard, Nano Saliapaga. He comes back from a lot of injuries. He kind of gets forgotten. You're talking about someone who had, a year and a half of starting experience at both tackle and guard. I think he swings to the interior, becomes a starting guard for BYU. Center, James Empey, could be an All-American. Right guard, it's either going to be Clark Barrington or Connor Pace. One of those guys. Barrington got banged up at the end of the season. Connor Pace, big time offensive line prospect out of Lone Peak High School. He's going to be really good. Right tackle, I think Harris LeChance going to win that job. And I think also Campbell Barrington could be in the mix as well. So that's my O-line. And then some of the other offensive line personnel for BYU. You got Braden Keim from Alta High School, Seth Willis. Donovan Hanna switches over from tight end to offensive line. Dylan Rollins, I believe, will join the program this fall. He's a high school signee out of Montana. Joe Tukwafu, he's banged up right now, got injured in the bowl game. Barrington, Tyson Lewis, Elijah Unatoa, and then Elia Migao, a 17-year-old. He joins the program this fall. Then also Brock Gunderson coming off a mission. But the big story again, Puka Nacua, Samson Nacua, transferring to BYU. What impact does this have on BYU football in 2021? Do you feel it's good enough for a win or two? Do you feel like this closes the gap for BYU against Utah? Or does Utah get to their 10th straight win against the Cougs? That's going to be a game, man. It's going to be interesting to see if BYU, the pandemic, what's going to happen with all that. But if we can see a full Lavelle Edwards Stadium for that game, that's going to be a good one. Utah's got questions at quarterback. I think at running back too, but their defense is going to be nasty. BYU's offense versus Utah's defense, that is going to be a battle to watch. I can't wait for that. I think that's going to do it, though, for this KSL Sports Front Page Live. BYU basketball coming up tonight, 10 o'clock on KSL News Radio. They're going to be taking on the Pepperdine Waves in the WCC tournament. I hope all of you enjoyed this. Follow me on Twitter at Mitch_Harper and follow us, KSL Sports, on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and download the KSL Sports app, please. Make sure to do that on the App Store, Google Play. It's always brought to you by University Federal Credit Union. Puka Nacua, Samson Nacua officially headed to BYU. We'll have more reaction on KSLSports.com tonight and tomorrow and throughout probably pretty much the offseason here on KSLSports.com. Take care. Signing